A woman, desperate for cash, agrees to date a couple's teenage son in exchange for a free car. What starts off as a transactional decision ends up drastically changing her life. In Montauk, New York, Gary backs his tow truck into a driveway. As he fixes the hook onto the car, Maddie Barker comes running out of the house to stop the man from taking her vehicle. The man, whom she previously dated, says he's repossessing her vehicle as an asset seizure since she hasn't paid her house's property taxes. Maddie asks how she's supposed to pay the taxes now that they've taken her main source of income as an Uber driver. She says she won't be able to make enough solely on bartending. However, the man admits he still hasn't forgiven her for ghosting him after their 3-month relationship. So, she tries to get on his good side by saying that she's missed him too. Suddenly, a man comes out of the house, and upon realizing she's been seeing other people, Gary is more determined to take her car away. Maddie tries to explain and says that he's her cousin, but his inappropriate touching suggests otherwise. Before the heartbroken man drives off, she asks if he can drop her off at the Claw, the bar where she works, but he indifferently refuses. Later that morning, Maddie rollerblades to work, and on the way, spots Gary's tow truck outside a bakery. So, she sneaks into his vehicle to lower her car, then tries to drive it away. However, she forgets to unhook her car from the truck, and the noise it makes alerts Gary. He runs out of the bakery and presses the button to lift her car back up, making it impossible for her to escape. That afternoon, Gabe Sawyer, Maddie's lawyer, informs her that she needs to be careful because one more infraction could lead to her losing her license. When she complains about how she won't be able to pay her debts now, he says she still has until September 1st to figure it out. Then, she expresses her hatred of rich folks from the city who buy summer houses in Montauk, raising the property taxes for the locals. At the Claw, the woman lets her general disdain for rich New Yorkers get the best of her when she refuses to serve a yacht owner a drink before noon, even if it's 11:57. When she and a customer get into an argument, Fern steps in and reminds the bartender that she has to be nice to the summer customers because it's the bar's busiest time of year. Later, Maddie hangs out with her pregnant friend Sarah and her boyfriend Jim while scrolling the internet for cheap cars for sale. Suddenly, Sarah shows her an ad from a couple who's looking for a woman in her 20s to date their shy teenage son to help prepare him for the real world before he leaves for college. They promise to give the person a Buick Regal for free after the successful job. That afternoon, Maddie is still mulling over whether to apply, and Gabe says if the rich people head to Montauk to use them, they should be able to return the favor. The woman also says she really needs the car to save the house, because that's what her mother would have wanted. The next day, she rollerblades to the couple's house, where she sees the Buick Regal parked outside. Then, she finally meets Laird and Allison Becker, who ask her how old she is. At first, she lies and says she's in her late 20s, but eventually admits that she's 32. When she senses their apprehension, she explains that the person dating their son must be youthful, but also have the maturity to handle the delicate situation, and they agree. Eventually, the couple talks about their son, Percy, whom they say is smart and talented, but extremely shy. The teen has never dated, nor does he have any friends, and he doesn't drive. He's headed to Princeton in the fall, and the parents are worried he'll be ill-prepared for the overwhelming experience of independence, which is why they believe she can help him come out of his shell. They make it clear that they also encourage the woman to sleep with Percy. When she says she should just surprise the teen in his bedroom, they insist that the two meet organically, because if their son finds out they hired a woman to date him, he'll be devastated and lose even more self-confidence. So, Allison suggests she drop by the animal shelter where the teen volunteers from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and pretend to adopt a dog. The next day, Maddie enters the animal shelter and demands that Percy help her choose a dog. So, they head to the back office where she answers a few questions, and from her aggressively forward approach, the shy teen says he doesn't think she's the type of person he'd ever allow to adopt a dog. Eventually, she says she can give him a ride home, and even though he tries to refuse by getting his co-worker Crispin to tell him he can't leave before closing, he relents. Maddie loads his bike onto Jim's van, which she borrowed, and tells the teen to ride up front with her. During the car ride, Percy realizes they missed the turn to his house, but she says they're using a shortcut. Scared he might be getting kidnapped, he tries to text his parents, but the woman playfully takes his phone away. When she pulls into her driveway, Percy takes out his mace and sprays it directly on her face. She screams in pain and stumbles out of the van. Furious, she asks why he would attack her, and he says he thought she was abducting him. Maddie says she only took him home because she thought he was attractive, catching the teen off guard. So, he suggests they go on a date tomorrow night, and she accepts. The next morning, the woman tells Jim she'll need to borrow the van again, but he says he needs to air out the vehicle because he can't have his pregnant girlfriend inhaling the mace fumes. So, she has no choice but to borrow the Claw's work car. That evening, the pair meet up at a bar, and Maddie makes fun of his suit and shorts combo. Percy nervously admits that he's scared his parents are going to find out that he's in a seedy bar, and when she asks how they'd know, he says it's because they track his phone. When he takes a sip of his alcoholic beverage, he says it tastes terrible, and the woman tells him that he'll have to get used to it because he's going to college. Suddenly, Travis joins the table and informs his ex-girlfriend Maddie that he's gotten married. The woman clearly doesn't care, so the man says his wife didn't run away when he told her he loved her, opposite of what she did. Then, he warns Percy to be wary of the lady's heartbreaker reputation. After the man leaves, the teen wonders why she slept with a person she clearly despises, and she nonchalantly says she only did it because it was Christmas, and she was lonely. Later, the pair walk down to the beach, where she goads him into swimming clothless in the water. When he refuses to break the rules, she says it's because he doesn't find her attractive. Percy explains that that isn't the reason, especially since she's probably the prettiest woman he's ever seen. Finally, the teen faces his fears and joins her in the water. Suddenly, a group of intoxicated teens steals their clothes on the beach, prompting the furious Maddie to confront them. She takes on the trio by herself and manages to scare them off. Then, she returns to the water, where Percy says her frightening demeanor scares him. Annoyed, she heads back to her car to drive home, but when the teen thinks she's hiding his phone from him, he jumps on the hood of the car. Taking it as a challenge, she drives on the highway with Percy hanging on for dear life. When a cop car tails them, she refuses to stop since she's already on probation. To evade the authorities, she drives over the tracks, just before a train barely misses them. Later, in her house, she puts on some music and starts dancing suggestively in front of him. She asks if he'd like to move to the bedroom, and he says yes, but she notices him scratching his back. When she lifts up his shirt, she sees that he's broken out in hives, and he explains that it happens whenever he's anxious. Minutes later, Maddie applies rash cream on his back and shares that she's always lived in the house and only left town once when she was 18. However, she had to come back home when her mother became ill to take care of her. He reveals that he had to switch schools in 9th grade after people found out he still slept in his parents' room sometimes, and a rumor started that he engaged in inappropriate behavior with them. He thinks it might be the reason why he spends most of his time in his room. Eventually, he apologizes that he couldn't make love to her tonight, but promises they can hang out again tomorrow. The next day, the pair enjoy a day at the beach with the shelter dogs, including Milo. They play laser tag and arcade games, until security tosses them out for her bullying the kids. Later, after the teen asks why she never went to prom, she shares that the reason her father never helped take care of her mother was because he had a family in the city, and Maddie was the result of an affair. Her father's lawyers cleared everything up, gave her mother money and the house to keep them out of the way. She had sent her father a letter asking why he wanted nothing to do with her. On the day of the prom, she received the unopened letter back and was too heartbroken to go to the event. Suddenly, Percy asks if he can kiss her, and she says yes. After the kiss, he receives a text message from his old nanny Jody to meet at the lighthouse. At the lighthouse, the woman is surprised to learn that Jody is actually a male nanny. When the teen leaves to retrieve a frisbee, the protective nanny asks Maddie why she's dating Percy, and says he knows a lot of powerful people he can contact if she ever hurts him. Later, Doug Kahn, Maddie's high school classmate, stops by to ask if she'd like him to broker her house's sale, explaining that she'll lose half its worth if she fails to pay her taxes. Incensed, the woman refuses, and slams the door in his face. That evening, Percy fetches the woman in a limousine so they can pretend like they're going to prom, since they never went to their respective ones in high school. He says he left his phone at home on purpose, because he just wants to talk to her the whole night. In the restaurant, Maddie challenges him to play the piano, and he reluctantly obliges. To her surprise, he sings and plays the piano beautifully. Suddenly, Percy's childhood friend Natalie comes by to commend him on the performance, and to tell him that she's going to Princeton too. When Maddie sees that the two teens share a lot in common, and that the friend keeps subtly referring to her age, the woman immediately disdains Natalie. Before she heads back to her table, the friend tells Percy about a house party later. Moments later, the woman says she can't believe that he can perform in a room full of people, but can't drive a car. He says he's planning on getting his license since it'll be easier to drive from the university to Montauk on weekends. When she realizes that the teen is talking about how they'll make their relationship work when he's in college, she says she doesn't do long distance. Confused, he says that he doesn't know what she wants from him, so she reasons that she just wants to enjoy tonight. Hurt, he leaves the restaurant, so Maddie follows him back to the car. During the ride, the woman notices his cold demeanor and realizes he told the driver to take them to the party Natalie mentioned earlier. Minutes later, Maddie enters the house to find the teen. There, the crowd gives her strange looks and remarks how she's too old to be there. She asks some people if they've seen Percy, and they say he's in one of the rooms with Natalie. Aware that she might not get the car if the teen sleeps with anyone else before her, she quickly searches all the rooms. Outside the last door, she hears noise from the other side, so she kicks in the door so she can unlock the knob. Inside, she finds the teens on the bed, but Natalie swears nothing happened between them. Then, Maddie notices Percy looking dazed, and he says he took something a while ago. Concerned he might have ingested an illegal substance, she drags him to the bathroom to force him to throw up. Then, he admits that he just took an over-the-counter analgesic, to her relief. Moments later, the crowd enters the room, and a couple who owns the house demands that Maddie leave. When he sees the man grabbing the woman, Percy throws a punch, but accidentally hits her throat. Although she has difficulty breathing, she grabs the teen, so they can leave together. In the limo, Percy says he's finally ready to make love, however Maddie says he's drunk, which wouldn't be ideal for his first time. The next morning, Laird tells his son that they can drive to work together, but the eager teen says he'd like to do the driving, so he can practice whenever he visits his girlfriend. The couple feigns ignorance and asks him about the woman, so Percy says his girlfriend is great even if she's on the older side. He adds that since she doesn't do long distance, he doesn't plan on attending Princeton anymore. Stunned, the parents object, but the teen says he's of age, and he can make his own life decisions. Eventually, Allison tells him to wait for his father in the car. Soon, the couple calls Maddie, who tells them that she might have to end the agreement because Percy's gotten too attached. Because they know she's the only person who can convince their son to attend Princeton, Laird says he'll sign over the ownership of the Buick Regal if she promises to change their son's mind. At that exact moment, the teen activates the Bluetooth connection to his father's phone from the car, and he hears the woman reveal that if she manages to convince him to go to Princeton, she'll get the Buick. Devastated and heartbroken, Percy lays in bed and stares at the ceiling. Later that day, he invites Maddie over to the house while his parents are there to knowingly place them all in an uncomfortable position, since they don't know he already discovered what they did. After thoroughly embarrassing the woman in front of Allison and Laird, he excuses himself after he receives a text message. When he leaves, the mother asks Maddie if she told their son the truth, and she insists she didn't. Outside, Percy meets with Crispin to take the Buick to the woods, where they destroy it. When he comes back to the house, he heads straight to his room instead of rejoining the table. Moments later, Maddie enters his bedroom and initiates lovemaking because she says that's what he wants. However, he finishes early, leading to an uncomfortable moment of silence. Then, he says her damaged car is in the forest, and asks if anything that happened between them was real. Realizing that he knows about the agreement, Maddie says their friendship was real because she told him things she's never told anybody. She explains that she only did it to save her house, and it wasn't personal, but he disagrees. The woman tries to apologize, but the teen tells her to leave. Before she goes out the door, he says one day he'll be living in Paris and she'll still be in Montauk. She says she doesn't have a rich dad to run to, and he counters that she's going to keep waiting for her absent father to return, which is why she'll never leave. Hurt, the woman takes her shoes and leaves the room. Days later, Maddie wakes up to the sound of Gary's tow truck leaving the totaled car in her driveway. He says he returned it because it belongs to her, and when she asks what she'll do with it, he says that it still works. Meanwhile, Percy confronts his parents about constantly intervening in his life. He says they need to allow him to succeed or fail on his own. For the next couple of weeks, Maddie uses the car to return to being an Uber driver and saves the money to pay off her property taxes. One night, Sarah and Jim tell the woman that due to the high cost of living in Montauk, they've decided to move to Florida. When she says she can't believe her friends are leaving, Sarah says she can't believe she's staying. The friend says her mother would have wanted her to be happy, and Maddie insists she likes her life there. Later that night, she makes out with a man she met at the bar. When he just wants to make love instead of having a conversation first, the exasperated woman tells him to leave. The next day, she takes the letter she sent to her father when she was younger and finally burns it. Soon, she's saved enough money to get the car fixed, and when she sees Gary across the street, finally apologizes for how she treated him. Then, she calls up Doug about wanting to sell the house, on one condition. Days later, Maddie learns from Allison that Percy is at a Princeton mixer, so she heads there to find him. However, the teen refuses to talk to her, so she apologizes and says their friendship was real, but that she hurt the people around her instead of dealing with her own problems. When he still won't talk to him, she jumps on the hood of his car, and he drives toward the beach. He runs over a bonfire, and an ember ignites the woman's clothes in flames. Eventually, he ends up in the water, and he helps Maddie back to shore. Maddie says she's sorry and gives Percy a hug. Later, they sit by the beach and she tells him that she's decided to sell the house and move to California, and they agree that they're both going to be okay. The next day, the woman surprises Sarah and Jim with her house. She says she's selling it to them at a lower price, so they can stay and raise a family in Montauk, like they've always wanted. Soon, Percy says goodbye to his parents before leaving for Princeton. Outside the house, Maddie's there to drive him to the university, on her way to California, and reveals that she adopted Milo to keep her company.